You've talked about freedom of thought before, which I think is a fundamental human right. Most people would agree exists, but it's linked to freedom of speech. I believe you've spoken about this in the past, and your work is in linguistics. I mean, how important is the speech component to the thought component to just being a human being?
Well, there were attempts to block freedom of thought. That's what the Inquisition was about. People were tortured to try to prevent their thoughts. They were made to take oaths under severe threat not to think certain things. And in fact, George Orwell had some comments about this, which are interesting. And Animal Farm, which everybody's read, of course, but not that many people have read the introduction to Animal Farm. One reason is it wasn't published. It was found in his unpublished papers 30 years later. I think it was published by if I'm not mistaken, by the Times Literary Supplement about 30 years after it appeared. It's not one of his great essays, but it's interesting. He's basically, the theme is this book is a satire on the totalitarian enemy, but people in free England shouldn't feel too self-righteous about it. Because in England, what he called literary censorship control is common. He says in England, unpopular ideas can be suppressed without the use of force. And he gives some examples, not very penetrating, but then a couple of sentences about how it works. He says part of the reason is that the press is owned by wealthy men who have every interest in seeing that some ideas are suppressed, like the example I gave about the publisher being destroyed. And that goes, he wasn't talking about that. He was just talking about the mainstream media. And then he said the other thing is basically just being brought into the culture. So you go to Oxford and Cambridge, you learn how to behave like a gentleman. You know, that you just have inculcated into you the idea that there are certain things it just wouldn't do to say. And I think we can add wouldn't do to think. Part of acculturation, what we call education, call it indoctrination if you like, is that there's some thoughts you just can't think. They wouldn't come to your mind because they're so pressed out of the culture. I'll give you an example from the lead headline in the newspaper this morning. Good place to start always. So the big headline in the New York Times is about allegations that the Russians paid Taliban bounty to kill Americans. Big, couple of main stories about it. Great outrage. There's something it wouldn't do to say, or probably to think. Let's go back to the 1980s. The United States was publicly not only announcing, but bragging about the fact that it was supporting radical Islamist mujahideen with the purpose of killing Russians. Okay, that was the official statement of the CIA station chief in Islamabad, who was running the operation. Top officials, Brzezinski and others, were saying, we're giving them their Vietnam. We can kill a lot of them by arming radical Islamists to kill them. It wouldn't occur to anybody to think of that when we say, maybe the Russians, that we don't have evidence, maybe they're paying somebody to kill Americans. That's the kind of thing you don't think if you're well educated.